Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Settling in for our last night of practice together, but not the last night of the retreat. Santi will be on his way. And to be honest, it's not easy to think what to offer about the section that we just chanted out loud, sort of culmination section of the sutta, which refers to something which all of us, not being Sammasambuddhas, have probably not directly experienced. That is the triple knowledge that the Buddha attained on the night of his awakening, in which some of his greatest disciples were able to attain, namely a recollection of past lives, the knowledge and vision of beings being reborn according to their karma, and the knowledge of the Four Noble Truths and the destruction of greed, hatred, and delusion, destruction of the asavas. So it's actually quite interesting, I think, looking at this from time to time, maybe with a mind that's not so conditioned to examine or to think of this as, well, this is what the Pali Canon is, this is what it says, and seeing it from an intellectual perspective. But recently we had the family group, and we were introducing a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old to the idea of karma. And of course they had heard the word, but they weren't necessarily, they didn't have a strong idea of it. And we were able to point out that actually most cultures and most people have a strong idea of karma. But that the workings of it are something that we all spend our entire lives trying to develop faith in and understanding of. It's a good reminder that life happens. And I think that's what really the first section of the Triple Knowledges is alluding to. So we were talking to the family group, and Julian asked, well, can you remember your past lives? And what could you remember? It's a very innocent question, but very appropriate. What is memory? How does it work? And if somebody asked us what town we grew up in, we would have the name of the town instantly. We wouldn't have to go back and think of street signs or places on maps or people telling us. We just have a sort of knowledge. And the Buddha alludes to this, is that we may not necessarily be able to just like a camera, a roll of film, just be able to lay out every scene from a past existence, and yet still there could be this knowledge. There still is this faculty of mind which can know things about the past. And it's very curious. The Buddha even demonstrates during his teaching career the ability to intuit how things will go in the future. And it's never really explained, and that's never laid out as a psychic power or a super knowledge. But one can kind of take this to be a visible fruit of spiritual practice, is unlocking capabilities of mind which we lose sight of. That really struck me is this idea of recollecting your existence in eons where the universe is expanding, eons where the universe is contracting, eons where it's going back and forth, and imagining here we are, and there's a war going on, and it's hard, it's difficult. an important person in the valley passed away. Thich Nhat Hanh passed away a few weeks ago. The events of our life seem so important. And it's hard to kind of zoom out. Imagine if the world was ending, would that change the perspective on things? Or if the world had just arisen and everything was fresh and new, would that change our perspective on things? What the first knowledge is alluding to is that we've seen everything, and that in every instance, whether the universe was expanding or contracting, whether it was being destroyed, whether it was the end of times, or whether we were the first ones on site to a bright new universe full of possibility, in every instance, what we paid attention to was our little piece of it, to our pleasure and pain, to our food, to our family, to our country, to our likes and our dislikes. And that is the mechanism, the glue of samsara, is that if we were to understand the immensity of it, we would probably get tired of it and opt out. But we keep our nose down and we just keep plodding along. And that's why samsara continues. And the second knowledge is just really an expansion of that. Whereas the first knowledge has us looking at our past existence and really kind of embodying what that means to have just been going on and on from beginningless time. The second knowledge has us turning our awareness outside and seeing how this is playing out around us. So this is not just us, it's not just our memories or our existence in samsara. As all beings are doing this continuously, going up and going down based on their actions, based on their views. And seeing this again, another layer of craving and participation can kind of settle and precipitate out of the mind. As we can realize that there's no solution to it. No matter what we do or where we go, we can look to any of the realms, any of the beings, and just see them acting out patterns that we can surmise we would act out in their situation. Because that's what the mind does. It's kind of presented with the scenario and it just does its little thing. And again, that's what's kept samsara going. And then the third knowledge, the sort of peak of the sutta, the Buddha says this is the knowledge beyond which there is no better or finer fruit of the holy life, and that is liberation, nibbana. And this is where, as we were saying last night, it is, it's not simply seeing, it's not simply like being mindful, it's actually an action that has to be done. So either the mind has been on this course like a train following railroad tracks since beginningless time. Like we can't even figure out how long it's been going on. The Buddha couldn't even figure out how long it's been going on. And it might not be possible. Like every existence might have memories of previous existences, whether or not those existences were lived. All we know is that the further back we look, the more there's memories from previous existences. But the one thing that's been steady is following this track of believing in a self, believing in an existence, and wanting to get our little piece, creating a subject to experience an object. And the craving that perpetuates that. So this final knowledge is the knowledge that in some far-flung corner of our minds, there is a choice being made, a choice to be ignorant. and that the choice is something so primordial and something so strange and essential that we don't even understand that we're making it. And we can't even understand the context of our making that choice, because everything that we do in the world, the whole structure of our mind as it's formed from the moment of our birth, is based around this idea of self. And so this final knowledge is where we understand, finally, in context, this choice that we're making to remain ignorant, to remain in samsara. And this is likened to be, I think, the great force master Ajahn Mahabua talked about just an explosion, an earthquake, a shattering, when he finally saw this for himself. That it turned everything upside down. It was completely unintuitive, the realization he had. And after that moment, peace. There was something that had to be done. There was something that had to be inverted. There was something that had to be seen through. And a choice that had to be made different, a choice that had never been made differently. But following that, there's never any continuance of samsara. And so the Buddha is pointing to, no matter what you might get in mundane terms, no matter whatever you might accomplish, and he's not saying these are not fruits of the holy life. He's actually laying them all out. He's saying these are all good things. If you were to pursue even one of these, you would be getting your money's worth. Because this is not a normal thing for people to do, to develop the Eightfold Path, develop these freedoms and knowledges. These are rare things in the world. But this is the peak. Once you have this, you would not find yourself wanting for any more. You would not find yourself needing any more. And finally he says, you would know that that's that. With this knowledge, there's no confusion about the matter. And so we can say, if we're not quite sure if we're enlightened yet, then we're not. Because the Buddha says authoritatively, is that once this choice has been made, once this kama dragging us along in samsara has been cut, there's just no going back. Because we would never choose to go back. And that we know finally that it was a choice that we were making. We were choosing to be ignorant, and now we're no longer doing that. And so this, as the Buddha lays out, it's just a wonderful sutta. And thank you very much, friends, for being willing to survey it, to look at it, to chant it, even. Definitely these last two sessions have been kind of marathon sessions, but really, really worthwhile to reflect on this, to come back to it, and really probably my favorite sutta, or at least in my top 5, simply because of these beautiful images, this beautiful phrasing. It's really wonderfully laid out holy life, a complete and pure spiritual life, as the Buddha calls it. So that's all I got to say. Good stuff. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.